All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going deep on the book of Ephesians.
Oh, Ephesians. It's a good one.
It is, and we've got like a whole stack of sources here. We've got, um, some history stuff about what was going on in Ephesus back then, some like, theological breakdowns, and even some more modern takes on it.
Sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, I'm excited. So the goal today is to kind of figure out why, this letter, this book of Ephesians, why it still matters like thousands of years after Paul wrote it.
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Totally. So maybe we should just start with the basics. Like we're calling it the book of Ephesians, but it was really a letter, right?
It was Paul, the Apostle Paul wrote it to this specific community of early Christians. They were living in the city, Ephesus, which was, well, it was a major hub back then. It was a port city, tons of trade and all kinds of people coming and going.
Wow. So like imagine getting a letter from Paul. What was it like in Ephesus, though? Like what made this letter so important to them?
Well, I mean, like I said, it was a busy city, and not just busy, but super diverse.
Yeah.
Think like all these different cultures and religions, philosophies, all kind of bumping up against each other.
Oh, I bet that was interesting for the early Christians there.
Yeah, definitely a challenge, trying to figure out who they were, how to live out their faith in that kind of environment.
So that's where Paul comes in. And from what I've read, Ephesians, it's not just like how to be a good Christian manual. It's got some pretty big ideas in it.
Oh, yeah, it goes deep for sure. Paul's tackling some universal themes, things that go way beyond just that specific time and place.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, one of the big ones is the idea of unity. God's plan to unite everything, bring people together no matter their background.
Jews and Gentiles, right?
Yeah.
Like that was a big deal back then.
Huge. Paul's saying, look, it doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, you're all united under Christ. Like he lays it out in Ephesians 1:10, calls it a plan for the fullness of time to unite all things in him, things in heaven and things on earth.
Wow. So for Paul, like difference wasn't a bad thing. It was like something to bring together, to make something even bigger.
Exactly. And this unity thing, it's not just some like feel-good idea. It has real implications for how we live, how we view the church.
Okay, so the church. When I hear that word, honestly, I think of a building or an organization. But Paul seems to have something else in mind.
Definitely. Paul, he uses this really powerful image. He talks about the church as a body.
A body.
Yeah, like our physical bodies. We've got all these different parts and they all work together to make the whole thing function. Paul's saying the church is kind of like that. It's made up of all these different people with different gifts and they all got to work together, for a common purpose.
Okay, so it's less about everyone being the same, more about everyone playing their part, using what they're good at to contribute.
Exactly. And it all goes back to that idea of unity we were talking about. It's like, Ephesians 4.1c, and it talks about, the proper working of each individual part and how that leads to the whole body growing in love.
I like that. It makes you think about how we so often get hung up on our differences in like communities or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of seeing those differences as, well, as strengths.
Right. Instead of something that can actually make us stronger together.
Okay, so Ephesians, it lays out this vision of unity, this picture of the church as a body.
Yeah.
But it doesn't just stop there. Like it also gets into, the practical stuff, right?
Absolutely. Ephesians isn't just about big ideas. It's got a lot of really practical advice about, how to actually live as a Christian in your relationships, at work, even just in your day-to-day life. It's like Paul saying, okay, here's the big picture. Now here's how to make it real.
That's what I find so interesting. What kind of practical advice are we talking about? And does it still apply to us today?
Well, one that always stands out to me is in Ephesians 5.1516. Let me see. It says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil.
Making the best use of the time. Huh.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's like this reminder to be intentional about how we're living, to focus on what really matters, especially, in a world that's constantly trying to distract us.
Oh, tell me about it. I mean, think about it. We're all just bombarded with information, distractions, demands on our time.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get lost in all of that and lose sight of what's actually important.
Exactly. And Ephesians is like this call to step back, to ask ourselves, am I living in a way that reflects this vision of unity, of
Yeah.
purpose? Am I using my time, my gifts in a way that actually contributes to that body that Paul's talking about?
So we've got these huge ideas like cosmic level stuff about unity and purpose, and then also this down to earth, you know, practical stuff about how to live with intention and meaning. It's a pretty cool mix.
It is. And honestly, I think that's a big part of why Ephesians still speaks to people, after all this time.
Yeah.
It speaks to this longing that I think we all have, this longing for meaning, for connection. And at the same time, it gives us some real guidance on how to live out those things.
Yeah, it's awesome. We've just barely scratched the surface of this letter, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a little taste of, how much is in there.
It's rich.
I'd really encourage you to, go check out Ephesians for yourself, see what jumps out at you.
Yeah, and as you're reading, think about this. If the church is meant to be this unified body, made up of all these different people working together, what does that mean for how we interact with, people from different backgrounds, different beliefs, even people we disagree with? It's a question worth thinking about, especially these days.
Yeah, it is. All right, well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
See you next time.